city went dark at 10:30 on a Tuesday. One moment, light. The next, nothing. And the particular hush of a world without electrical hum, which she didn't notice until it was gone. They found candles, a mismatched collection of stumps and tapers, and one jar candle that smelled of cedarwood, and assembled them on the coffee table. And for a while they sat on the floor because the sofa seemed somehow too formal for candlelight, and the end of a Tuesday, and a city full of dark windows. Nadia had been Luca's roommate for 11 months. She knew the geography of him, his hours, his habits, the particular way he laughed when something genuinely surprised him versus when he was only being polite. She knew these things without having cataloged them. They had simply accumulated the way warmth accumulates in a room. But tonight, something about the removed light had removed something else too. Some quality of ordinary life that usually served as a kind of buffer between them. In the candlelight, in the dark apartment, in the small circle of warmth and flickering gold, she noticed that she had been not looking at him for a long time. The precise, deliberate not looking of someone who has been trying not to know something they already know. She'd been aware for some months of the specific architecture of her own avoidance, the way she'd arranged her daily life to remain always slightly adjacent to him rather than directly present, the careful management of distance that masquerades as ease. She had told herself this was simply good sense. You did not complicate a good living arrangement. You did not risk losing something that was working by wanting it to be something else. She had been telling herself this so successfully that she had almost believed it. The power outage had removed the infrastructure of ordinary life and left them only this: the floor, the candles, the dark, the sound of each other breathing. No screens, no tasks, no reasons to be in separate rooms. The space between them on the floor was exactly as small as the space had always been. But tonight there was nothing to not look at it with. He had made tea on the gas hob, perhaps without asking, the accumulated habit of 11 months expressing itself as a form of care. And they sat with their backs against the sofa with the candles between them. She was holding her cup in both hands, watching the flame move. They talked the way you talk, when there is nothing to do but talk, without purpose, without the usual underlying current of lives to return to. They talked about childhood things, small, embarrassing things, the particular textures of their respective families, the specific rooms they had grown up in, the objects and sounds that still meant something to them without knowing why. She told him about the summer she'd spent failing to learn the piano, the specific sound of her own wrong notes, the way she had loved the piano anyway despite being bad at it. He told her about the year he'd been convinced he was going to be an astronaut, and had kept a detailed flight log of things he would do when he got to space. She found herself laughing at that, the real laugh, the one that surprised her, and he laughed too. And she was aware of the sound of both of them laughing in the dark apartment with only the candles, and of what it meant that two people could laugh together so easily in the middle of the night in a power outage on a Tuesday, and of the specific warmth of being with someone who made ordinary, difficult things feel like something you wanted to be having, rather than something you were enduring. She had been having that feeling for months, she realized, not dramatically, not in any way that announced itself, simply the consistent background condition of, this is better because he is here, the good days better, the difficult days bearable, the evenings that would have otherwise been merely fine, becoming something she looked forward to. She had attributed this to living with someone compatible, to the good fortune of a good roommate arrangement. She had been very determined for a very long time to attribute it to that. The candles made attribution difficult. In the ordinary light of ordinary life, the ordinary explanations had been sufficient. In the dark, with only the warmth of the flames and his face across the coffee table, at 11 proximity settling around them, like something finally allowed to rest. The ordinary explanations were not sufficient. They did not cover the full territory of what she was feeling. They left too much unexplained. She was discovering that she didn't know him as well as she thought, that the geography she'd accumulated was a surface geography, a map of behavior rather than of interior. The interior revealed now in the candlelight in the darkness was larger and stranger and more beautiful than she had known. She thought, I have been living beside something I have not been brave enough to actually look at. She thought, I am looking at it now. She thought about bravery, about what it required of her. She had thought for a long time that the brave thing was to protect the arrangement, to not disturb what was working, to not risk something certain for something uncertain. She'd been operating on the assumption that restraint was a form of wisdom. She was revising this assumption in the candlelight. Restraint was useful when you were protecting something genuinely fragile. But 11 months in, the arrangement was not fragile. It was solid. It had been tested by the ordinary difficulties of shared life, the disagreements about noise and guests, and the temperature of the flat, and who had forgotten to buy coffee. And it had held. What she had with him was not fragile. It was strong enough to bear the weight of honesty. She thought, the brave thing is not to keep managing the distance. The brave thing is to stop. The thing she had not been looking at was this, that she had come to love the sound of him in the apartment, the particular sound of his movements, the way he made coffee in the morning, the sound of his keys on the entry table, the way he moved through a room with the specific weight and rhythm of someone she had come to know by sound as well as sight, that she had come to sleep better knowing he was on the other side of the wall, that she had started without quite meaning to organize her days around his presence and his absence, in a way that was not housemate logistics, but something else entirely. The thing she had not been looking at was the fact that when he laughed, the real laugh, the surprised one, it did something to her chest that she had been carefully filing under. I am simply glad when the people I live with are happy. She'd been filing a great deal under that heading. The filing cabinet was quite full. She thought about what it would mean to stop not looking, what would change, and what would stay the same. She'd run this calculation before, in the careful part of her mind that ran calculations, and it always arrived at, the risk is too large. The certainty of what you have is worth more than the uncertainty of what you might have. A working arrangement is a rare thing. Do not take it apart to see if something better is inside. She thought, the power outage has taken apart the working arrangement. The ordinary machinery of daily life is stopped, and what is left in the dark, in a candlelight, is what was inside all along. The candles threw their soft, unsteady light across his face, and she looked at him, actually looked, the deliberate looking she'd been avoiding, and found that the face she knew from 11 months of proximity was different in candlelight, or perhaps only different when she was allowing herself to actually see it. It was a face she recognized as one she had been careful not to love. A face she understood now, past being careful about. They were mid-sentence. Something about the neighborhood, the outage, some small ordinary thing. When he stopped talking and looked at her and didn't continue. The silence that followed was not awkward. It was full. It had a texture to it, warm and trembling slightly like the candle flame. She didn't look away. For once, she didn't look away. He leaned forward slowly, elbows on his knees, closing the distance between them by degrees, as if checking after each small movement that she was still there, still herself, still willing. His eyes on hers the whole time. The candlelight made them liquid and very warm. At close range she could see everything. The faint lines lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his breath had changed, the particular stillness of someone who has decided. He raised his hand and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, fingers trailing along her jaw afterward, and left them there, his hand against her face, warm and slightly unsteady, and she turned her face into his palm, the way a flower turns toward available warmth. That small turning was all the answer either of them needed. He kissed her slowly and thoroughly, and with a tenderness that rearranged something in her chest. His other hand came up, and he held her face in both hands, like something he was afraid to hold too tightly, too loosely, afraid to hold it all but unable now to stop. She felt his thumbs at her cheekbones, and his lips on hers, and a warmth of the candles, and his nearness all at once, a warmth that seemed to come from everywhere simultaneously. She reached up and covered his hands with hers, held them there against her own face, as if to say, "It's all right. Stay." The kiss was unhurried, in the way that things are unhurried when you've stopped trying to manage them. She kissed him back with all the feeling she had been not looking at for months, offered it directly now, without management, without distance, without any of the careful architecture of avoidance she'd spent 11 months constructing. She thought, 11 months. She thought, not too late. She thought exactly what it was supposed to be. The lights came back on 2 hours later. Neither